In this devlog, I finished the Plains area in my indie game, and the game is now about 30% done. I'm Empathy, and this is my open world wizard game Vitality, where you cast spells that are combinations of elements and states of matter, like fire and plasma, or water and gas. I've made more systems since the last devlog, with them being incredibly important to any open world game. The two systems that I've added to Vitality are the quest system and the shop system. In a previous devlog, I talked about my dialogue system, and I realized that I should connect it to both the quest and shop systems, as you usually receive quests within dialogue and usually can buy items after talking to a person. The dialogue system is built with the NPC script, which manages the dialogue, and the NPC extras script, which is used to swap between different NPC scripts based on certain conditions, and it also adds functionality of NPCs giving or taking certain items from you. To start making the quest system, I made a quest manager that handles the quest log and when you obtain new quests, as well as the quest sender script. I then made a method in the quest sender that sends all of its data to the quest manager. Then, I can use these events that the NPC's extra script have already to start quests. As for the shop system, I made it in a similar way, with a menu triggered by a shop sender script and a shop manager. The sender sends what items to display on the shop's menu. Then, this method to send the info to the shop manager can also be called by the dialogue with the NPC extra script. Next, I'll talk about the new camps I've added to Vitality. In Vitality, there are 4 main species of NPCs in my world. There's the humans, obviously, which live in the plains, as well as the elves, lizards, and these puffball guys called the pufffolk. Each race lives in its own area, like the humans living in the plains, the elves living in the forest, the pufffolk living in the mountains, and the lizards living in the swamp. Along with living in their own area, each species has their own cultural form of magic. These forms of magic are the 4 main states of matter, being solid for the humans, liquid for the lizards, gas for the elves, and plasma for the pufffolk. In the full version of Vitality, you will unlock the new states of matter in each area, learning them from each race. However, in the demo, only the plains area is unlocked, but I want players to be able to use all 4 states of matter for the spells. So, to fix this, I'm going to have camps in the plains area of the other species in Vitality's world. These camps will be NPCs escaping from the deadlands of each region. What's the deadlands, you ask? It's the dead area around the dungeon in each area of Vitality that the Dark Lord has taken over and drained of its life force. Because of the drained life force, the NPCs living in that area have to move elsewhere. This also means that I can have an NPC in each camp that teaches you to use the spells of each state of matter, in this weird astral realm type location. Another feature I've added is grass rendering in Vitality. The plains area feels very flat without any sort of grass placed on the ground, which you can see in this older build of the game. So, I want grass to spawn, similar to how games like Minecraft render their grass. I made this grass sprite, which is used with 2 planes to create a grass blade effect. To be able to spawn thousands of these objects without the game lagging, I used a trick called GPU instancing, which is using the GPU to render objects instead of the CPU. This allows me to make grass all over the plains area with minimal lag. I also used GPU instancing for the clouds to make lots of them spawn. After rendering the grass, I realized there was something that I wanted to add to it. In the Deadlands, I wanted the grass to be a grayish color. The issue with doing that is the fact that the way I have it set up now, I can only use one material for all of the instanced grass. To fix this, I had 2 options. The first option is to modify my code so that different materials can be used in different parts of the plains area. This sounded like a lot of work and not really worth it to get the result that I was looking for. The second option would be to learn shaders. Shaders are a somewhat complicated part of game development, at least to me, as they are pieces of code that handle how certain objects render. What makes this difficult is that HLSL, the language used for creating shaders in Unity, is a different language than the normal language I use, C#. However, they're incredibly useful for making interesting and varied visual effects, so this is what I decided to go with, to learn a little bit more about it. Thankfully, to make this process a little easier, Unity has a shader graph, which allows you to make shaders through visual scripting instead of code. Through this process, I was able to make a shader that colors the grass gray in the Deadlands, as well as a few other features, like grass not spawning over water and grass blowing in the wind. I also was able to polish Vitality a lot more since last devlog, with the dungeon going from this to this. The biggest change I made between the two of them is the fog, with it flowing through the dungeon. This fog was also made with the shader graph, with it being a noise texture on a plane that scrolls along the ground. Because it's just a single plane, it's able to still perform really well, despite the fact that it's got transparency and that the plane is really massive. I also used this fog texture in the astral realm to give it more of a mystical look. The next thing I added for polish were these particles moving around the player. These are meant to look like fireflies, and I think they're a large improvement on the particles from before. Each particle also gives off some amount of light, which helps it look like a firefly, and has a trail, making it more magical. The trails on these particles were meant to look like these particles in the Kokiri Forest in The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And I think I made a version of these particles that look similar to Ocarina of Time's, but are unique in their own way. I've also finished the intro, with there being a tutorial on using spells and intro cutscenes that are flashbacks to when you started learning to use magic. But that's all I can discuss about my game's story so far, as I want to keep that a secret for the full release. Next, I added a few more technical features to Vitality, with the first features I'm going to talk about being saving and loading. I was able to learn how to save data from a file using this Brackeys tutorial here, and with that comes loading from a file. Using this save system, I save the spells that you have, the states of matter you have unlocked, as well as your money, inventory, scene, position, rotation, and the quests you've completed. However, in my opinion, that's not the craziest feature I've made. Recently, I found out that Unity has a feature called Unity Web Request. This allows Unity to connect to the internet, and I used it in combination with Google Forms to make a bug reporting / feedback system. By taking inspiration from Subnautica's feedback system, I made it so you can submit your feedback and I can actually receive it and implement bug fixes and feedback much faster. Next, I added a new health bar which has a similar idea to the previous one, being a potion flask, but it also has a cork and numbers to display how much health and max health you have, which makes it more interesting when you pick up a health flask, which are the health upgrades in Vitality. Finally, I added a final sneak peek within the game towards the other areas. Some of the other areas will have unique mechanics like potions or reforging. Speaking of reforging, that is something that I've included in this version of the plains. Typically, reforging items wouldn't be available until you go towards the mountains area, which is where the puff folk live. However, I want to be able to use reforging with other systems, like it being used for quests, and the dye you can make there being used in buildings like the salon for character customization. So, I decided to give what is essentially a sneak peek of the reforging mechanic in the puff folk's camp. That's mostly everything I can talk about in this update without just telling you everything that's in the game. But if you want to check out the quests, shops, and spells in Vitality, it's uploaded to itch.io, and the link is in the description below. That's all for this video, so make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see me develop the other areas in Vitality. See ya!